And in the last session, we started the VPC topic, right? And we covered few things like what is a VPC, what is a subnet, and what else we covered? Public subnet, private subnet, right? We covered all these things, and also we created all these components. We created the public subnet, we created the private subnet, we created server 1 and server 11, right? And then we observed that the server 1, which is in the public subnet, is accessible, means we can log in for administrative tasks from anywhere across the globe using the public IP address. Whereas the server 11 doesn't have any public IP, which is not accessible from outside of the VPC. Technically speaking, you cannot log in to the private subnet instances from outside of the AWS network, VPC network. Then how we have to access is the one way, the default way is a Bastion host. Bastion host. What is the Bastion host? Bastion host is a special purpose instance. It is not a special EC2 instance. That is a regular EC2 instance, which we will use for a special purpose. Okay. It is a regular EC2 instance, a regular normal EC2 instance, which can be used for a special purpose, which act as a gateway between the private subnet and the user. A gateway between the private subnet and the user means I am the user, I am the administrator who needs to log into the private subnet instance. The Bastion host act as a mediator, technically a gateway, so that it will allow me or it will help me to log in to the private subnet instance. Sorry. So here, let me write down. Bastion host is a special purpose, not a special instance, a special purpose EC2 instance, which acts as a gateway between the private subnet and the internet. In a simple words, we can say Bastion host allows us to log in to the private subnet instances. But you should know the IP address, you should know the username, password of the private subnet instances. And the Bastion host has to be in the public subnet only. The reason is if you create the Bastion host in the private subnet, first of all, you cannot communicate with the Bastion host. How come it allow you or how come it help you to log into the other instances? Generally, this Bastion host in the real time, sometimes we call this as a jump server also. Bastion host is also known as jump server. So first thing, how it helps, how it acts as a gateway. It is already I said, right? It is a regular EC2 instance, a normal EC2 instance. So in the public subnet, we create a Bastion host like this. Okay, I will name it as Bastion, right? So in which we will get a public IP and private IP because it is in the public subnet. So we can log in, right? Let us say here I am the user. I want to log into server 11. What I do first, I will log in. I will log in to the Bastion host. And from the Bastion host, here there is a remote desktop connection, right? From here, we can log in using private IP address. Why using private IP? The Bastion host and the server 11 both are in the same VPC. By default, the subnet one, this is the first subnet, and this is the second subnet. These two can communicate with each other by default. Means the Bastion host can access server 11 and server 11 can communicate with the Bastion host. So instead of opening the remote desktop connection tool in your machine, we will open that RDP in the Bastion host. From here, we will log into the server 11 and we can do all the things. The Bastion host can be either a Windows or Linux, that doesn't matter. Anything can be a Bastion host. But if I want to log into a Windows machines in the private subnet, And if the Bastion host is a Linux machine, then you don't get the remote desktop connection, graphical user interface, and all. So that's why majority of the cases we prefer to use a Windows server as a Bastion host. And this Bastion host will be what we call that. It's a highly hardened server. Hardened server in the sense there is something called server hardening, like configure like everything on that so that no person can get into that Bastion host without having a proper credentials, like close the firewall, don't open all the ports, make sure that the Bastion host is up to date with all the security patches and everything, right? And they apply some policies that depends on your organization policy, like the system administration team or the IT team will help you with all the policies and everything as per the organization. Okay, so now what we do is let us create the Bastion host and let us see how we can log in to the private subnet instances with the help of the Bastion host. Create a Bastion host. In the public subnet. Bastion host should be in the public subnet only. Okay, right. Then log in to server 11 using Bastion host. Then we will see, we can learn how we can access the private subnet instance. Okay, so first let us create the Bastion host. Once you see the process, you might say, okay, it is a kind of a normal creation only, right? That's true. Okay, let me click on launch instances. Server 1 and server 11 both are already running. Let me click on launch instances. Name, I will use it as a Bastion. Even you can use ABC, XYZ, that doesn't matter. I will go with browse more AMIs. I will choose a 2022 Windows operating system. Then I will go with a T2.micro because it is a free tier eligible. Choose the key pair, network settings, edit. VPC must be in the my first VPC and the public sub. Let me choose existing security group because the Bastion host is a Windows machine. I will choose a security group which will allow 3388 traffic. Click on launch instance. Now, did you find any difference between the creation of a normal Windows CC2 instance and this Bastion host? There is no difference. That is also a normal Windows EC2 instance only. It is for a special purpose. For that reason, we named it as a Bastion host. Okay. In the meanwhile, to log into any machine, we must know the username and password, right? Sorry. So let me get the details of both the servers. First, we need to log into server 11, right? Server 11 details. Let me write down here. So what all we need to write down? Public IP, we don't have. Private IP, username, and the password. Then the Bastion host. Public IP, private IP, because to create that Bastion host, it will take up to 4 to 5 minutes, right? In the meanwhile, I will note down all the details which we need to log, username and the password. Let me get all these details. So first, let me get the server 11. What is the public IP? No public IP. Private IP 192. This one, not applicable. Sorry. What is the username of any Windows machine? Administrator. Password, right? So how to get, select the instance, click on connect, RDP client, get password, upload the private key, the one which we have used at the time of instance creation, decrypt password, and here is the password. Now let me get the details of the Bastion host also. Here is the Bastion host, public IP. Here is the public IP, private IP. Bottom one is the private IP. Username, administrator, password. To get the password, click on connect, RDP client, get password, upload the private key file. And here's the password. So first what I do is with the help of private IP, let me try to log into the Bastion host directly like this. Sorry, server 1, which is not possible. The private subnet instance, which is server 11, we cannot access that directly because it is only having the private IP. But let me try first. Just I open the remote desktop connection. What is the private IP? 192.168.2.233. So what you will get an error. So what is the way? First, you need to log into the Bastion host. First, you need to log into the Bastion host. From the Bastion host, you have to log into server 11, right? Okay. So what is the Bastion host IP address? 98.81.149.68. Click on connect. It will ask you to enter the username and password of the Bastion host. Just remember, I am logging in to Bastion host first. Now I logged in to Bastion host, not server 11. Just wait a minute. We will be logged in and you will see the desktop of the Bastion host. Then from the Bastion host, we need to log into server 11. For the first time, whenever you're logging in, it will take some time because it has to create a profile for the logged in user and all. That's why it will take some time because our machines are running on one CPU and 1 GB of RAM. Obviously, the performance will be very, very low. So this is the Bastion host, which is the public subnet instance. In the public subnet instance, you can browse the internet, you can do all the things. There is no restriction. Okay, let me open the notepad. Why notepad? Just to write down the details of the server 11. The next step is we need to log into server 11, right? Every time minimizing this, copying the data. I don't want to get into that. So what I do is I will open the notepad and I will paste all the details about the server 11. See here, the server is too slow because it is running on one CPU and 1 GB of RAM. But for learning purpose, that is okay. I don't need a high-end machine for learning purpose. Okay, let me increase the font size. Okay. So here are the server 11 details, which I copied from my laptop. Right now, I am in server 11, not in my laptop. Okay. So if I click here, I will open remote desktop connection. Means the remote desktop tool connection I opened in server called Bastion host, not in my laptop. From my laptop, I cannot connect to server 11 using private IP. Okay, what is the IP address of server 11? 192.168.2.233. Click connect. The moment once you receive a login window means your Bastion host is able to communicate with your server 11, which is in the private subnet with the help of private IP. Administrator, password, password of server 11, click on OK. Like if you open a browser, you can have multiple tabs, right? Google one tab, Yahoo one tab. The same way, this is my laptop. Okay. This is my Bastion host. Yes. Then within the Bastion host, I'm going to open server 11. See here, this one. 192.168.2.233 IP address, which is the server 11. If I minimize this, this is my Bastion host. If I open it, this is, if whatever I do here, that will be executed on the server 11, which is the private subnet. Just wait a minute. Let it open everything so that we can observe whether it is a server 11 or not and all. We know the server 11 IP address, right? Which is like 192.168.2 dot something. Public subnet machines will have 1 dot something. It is a 2 dot something. What is the IP? Wait a second. 2.233 is the server 11 IP address. Okay, right now I am in the private subnet instance. From the outside, the private subnet machines are not accessible, right? That already we verified. But now the question is, in the private subnet instance, can we browse internet? Like if I open this Microsoft Edge, can I browse google.com, yahoo.com and all? Okay, how to identify whether it is a server 11 or not? You can see private IP address is 192.168.2.233. Okay, let me open Microsoft Edge. In the private subnet, you cannot reach the internet. You cannot browse internet. That is verified. In the public subnet machines, two-way communication is possible. Like from the outside, your machine is accessible. From your machine, outside is also accessible. Server will be a little bit slow. I don't want to pay any money. That's why always I prefer to go with a free tier, which is T2.micro, in which I got just 1 GB of memory and 1 CPU. That's why it will take some time to open anything. Just I double click the Microsoft Edge. So Edge browser will be opened. See here. Okay, I don't, but first time configuration of browser. I don't need any. I will skip all the things I will skip. Confirm and start browsing. Okay. So what I do here is I will type google.com. It is trying to load, but it will fail. It will fail because there is no way to reach the internet. There is no way to reach the internet. Not only google.com, you can check any website or you can go with any, say google.com is not accessible. The second tab, I opened the microsoft.com. That is also giving you some error. You have to get some patience, like while you are using the free tier Windows, especially the Windows machine. If I open a task manager, you can observe why we are getting this much slow response and all. Let me show you. Just I open the task manager in which you can observe the CPU utilization, memory utilization and all. Okay, if I click on more details, it will be expanded. Okay. What is the memory utilization? 83%. Then how you will get some performance, right? That's why you have to be little patient. Okay, so let me open another tab. Let me try to access something else, rediff.com. Whatever you try to access, you cannot, because the reason is in the private subnet, you cannot get internet browsing facility also. In the private or I can say private subnet instances, cannot browse the internet. Cannot browse the internet, or I can say by default, because in the real time, the private subnet machines must have an internet connection, at least outgoing connection. They won't allow any incoming traffic, but from the machines, they need to connect with the internet, because to download the Windows updates, to download some softwares and all, right? Okay. How to provide the internet? To understand that, we need to learn about network address translation, which is also known as NAT, network address translation, or a NAT. NAT is a service by using which we can share the internet with private subnet. Everywhere we are using that. NAT is not an AWS service or something. There is a generally available service. NAT is a service which can share the internet with private subnets in terms of AWS. In the real time, by using the NAT, we can share the internet with your local network. If you go for an office, they don't get a separate internet connection for every laptop and for every desktop, right? Even in your house, you don't get a separate internet connection for every desktop, for every mobile phone, and for every laptop. Is that true? Then with a single internet connection, how you are able to access the internet? How you are able to browse the internet with just a single internet connection across multiple devices. Okay, how it works? What we call that? The internet service provider, right? He will install a router. We call them as a modem or a router. He will install that modem or router in your location, right? They will install this modem or router at our home or somewhere, which means, here they will be having a public IP. They will assign a public IP to your router. Let us say 11.12.13.14, which is assigned by your ISP provider. Okay, where is the ISP? ISP office will be somewhere here, right? ISP. Your router will be connected with the internet service provider, and the modem or router is having a public IP and it can access the internet. Now, how it will share? Like in your house, let us say you are having multiple mobile phones. You are having multiple mobile phones or a multiple computers, right? Let us say this is server 1 and this is going to be server 2 and this is going to be computer 3. So what we do, all the devices will be connected to the router using a Wi-Fi connection or a wired connection, right? Using a Wi-Fi connection or a wired connection. And for the modem or the router, also there is going to be a private IP address. Let us say 192.168.1.1. And for your machines, computer 1, computer 2, and computer 3, there is going to be again a private IP address like 192.168.1.11 here. It is going to be 192.168.1.12, 192.168.1.30. With the private IP address, assume one of these computers are my laptop. With the private IP address, my machine cannot reach the internet. Then how I'm able to access the internet? In the modem or router, there is an inbuilt service called NAT, network address translation. What it will do? So while creating my machines with IP address, there is something called default gateway. Default gateway, in which we will mention that default gateway is my router's IP address. Let me show you. If I open command prompt in my laptop and if I type ipconfig, can you see my machine's IP address is 192.168.1.3? And what is the gateway? 1.1 means My router's IP address is 1.1. What is the meaning of that default gateway? Let us say in the computer 1, I type google.com. Okay, google.com. What happens? The request go to the NAT server. In the NAT server, it will record that google.com is requested by 192.168.1.11. I mean, the computer 192.168.1.11 is requested for google.com. At the same time, computer 3 is requesting for yahoo.com. The same way, it will record yahoo.com is requested by 192.168.1.13. And the NAT will go to google.com. It will go to yahoo.com. It will receive a response, right? And that response will be shared to these two computers. Google.com page will be served to computer 1. Yahoo.com page will be served to computer 3. That is what the NAT. By using the NAT, we can share the internet with your private subnets. And on AWS, we have an AWS managed NAT service, which is NAT gateway, And always the NAT must be in the public subnet. In the public subnet. How it works? NAT acts as a gateway between the private subnet instances and the internet, which allows the private subnet to browse the internet. To browse the internet. Without a NAT, you cannot. And here, coming to the NAT gateway is chargeable on an hourly basis. How many hours you keep that NAT gateway, for those many hours you are chargeable. That's not a free tire. Okay. And NAT gateway must have an elastic IP address. NAT gateway must have an elastic IP address. And NAT gateway is a highly available and highly scalable service. What is the meaning of highly available and highly scalable? Amazon will maintain a backup NAT gateway in the backend so that 24/7 you can use the NAT gateway. What is the meaning of a highly scalable? According to your usage, that NAT gateway automatically adjusts to allow up to like a 20 GB per second data transfer speed. Like automatically, it will increase the speed according to your usage. Best example, like you are having like 100 EC2 instances on your private subnet, and all the 100 EC2 instances are downloading Windows Update, which requires a huge bandwidth, right? So this NAT gateway automatically increase the bandwidth and reduce the bandwidth whenever you don't use it. Okay, now let us, which one it is? Oh, we are done with two, right? Okay, the third one, create a NAT gateway and observe the internet browsing in the public sub. So first step, create a NAT gateway. Then, and which requires elastic IP. Elastic IP sometimes we represent as a EIP. Then, let us say we created the NAT gateway. But the question is, how your computers know that they need to use the NAT gateway. For that, in the private route table, we need to create an additional route like this, but not through internet gateway. Here you need to use NAT gateway. Other than local traffic, all the traffic will be accessed with the help of an NAT gateway. Create an additional route in the private route table through that gateway as a below. So generally, whenever you talk about the routes, destination and the target, right? These are the two things we can observe. And by default, we are already having a route 192.168.0.0/16. Target is going to be local, which is default route. And we need to create an additional route like this. And here that gateway. This route allows your private subnet instances to use the NAT gateway to browse the internet. Then log into server 11, which is a private subnet instance, and browse internet. Once we are done with this, we will clean up the NAT gate. Why to clean up? The NAT gateway is not a free tier eligible. You will be charged. That's why we'll clean up. Okay. Right. So first we need to create an NAT gateway, right? How to create? Log into your AWS account, then navigate to VPC service. And what I said, it requires an elastic IP. So first you can allocate an elastic IP, right? In the VPC here, you can see elastic IPs. I don't have any elastic IP. Let me click on allocate. Let me add a tag. I will say NAT gateway, means this elastic IP I'm using for NAT gateway. Allocate. Elastic IP is allocated, but which is not associated. Then NAT gateway. Let us say you started creating a NAT gateway without allocating an elastic IP. Even that way also you can do. Let me show you. Click on create NAT gateway. So give a name. I will say my first VPC NAT gateway. In which subnet you would like to create? A public subnet of my first VPC. Connectivity type public. Here elastic IP. What if you don't have elastic IP? You can click on allocate elastic IP here, and the elastic IP will be allocated and attached with the NAT gateway. And click on create NAT gateway. The NAT gateway got created, which might take a few minutes, not more than 2 to 3 minutes of time. In the meanwhile, let us go to route tables, because what is the third step? Create an additional route in the private route table through NAT gateway as below. This is what we need to create. This is already existing default route. Where is our private route table? This is the one, right? Main route table of my first VPC is acting as a private route table. For identification, let me name it as, let me rename private R. Just rename. Okay. Right. So select that. And here you can choose, you can see routes, edit route. This is the default route. Add route 0000/0. Under target, choose NAT gateway. Then select the NAT gateway and click on save changes. And we are done. But before testing, make sure that the NAT gateway state is not pinned. It must be available, right? Still, it is pending state. That means your NAT gateway is not yet ready to provide internet browsing facility in the private subnet. Just wait for like few minutes. Once the state is ready or available, we will log into the private subnet machine. Here is our private subnet machine. We will check internet here. Earlier we got error, right? For Rediff.com, we got error. For Microsoft.com, we got error. Google.com also we got error. Okay. Yeah. State is available. If I log in, see here, Google is available. Refresh. Or wait a second. You can see at the bottom right corner, right? Earlier, you don't see this icon, the computer icon here. You will see something globe with no internet connection. Okay. I clicked, but it's taking some time. Wait. Let me type yahoo.com. Let me go to rediff.com tab and let me refresh the page and we will get the rediff.com website also. See here. Earlier, we did not get any internet connection. If you delete the NAT gateway, automatically you will lose all this internet facility in the private sub. Here, the problem is not with NAT gateway. The problem is with the EC2 instance. It is unable to get the internet because it has a limited resources, 1 GB CPU and 1 CPU and 1 GB of memory. For that reason, this Microsoft Edge is not properly responding. But anyways, let me close it. Instead of opening these many tabs, let me open just one tab because multiple tabs will consume more memory. Okay, it seems we got disconnected from server 11. I suspect CPU might reaches like 100% or so, and it's failed to respond. Let me log into server 11 one more time. If you don't want to face these kind of issues, go with some T2.small or T2.medium, but you will be charged for those instance types. Okay, so here is the password. I am logging in to server 11 again because it got disconnected, I guess, because of heavy CPU utilization or something. Okay, while it is getting loaded, are you guys clear with the Bastion host and the NAT gateway or any questions? I will show you the cleanup process also. It's not responding. Even I'm trying to close the Edge browser. Yeah, now I got it. Like if I click now, it is responding after 1 minute also. Okay, any questions on the Bastion host and a NAT gateway? Every time we use a NAT gateway because every company will maintain private subnets, and NAT gateway is the mandatory thing to share internet with the private subnet instances. So here we can observe in the private subnet instances, we can browse the internet. The moment once I delete, or I deactivate the NAT gateway, the private subnet instances will not get the internet again. That also will verify. So here we are able to browse Rediff, right? Now what I do is I will start cleaning up the NAT gateway. Once the NAT gateway got deleted, we will observe that we can't access the internet from the private subnet instances also. So here, let me open yahoo.com, just one more web page before deleting the NAT gateway. Just I opened the yahoo.com. Is struggling to load or struggling to load the web page. That's because of the minimum resources, not because of the internet speed. Have enough speed. That gateway can offer you enough speed for your computer. There is no doubt. Okay, so yahoo.com got loaded. So now what I do is I will minimize everything. I will start cleaning up the NAT gateway. Once the NAT gateway got deleted, we will check again for the internet connectivity in the private subnet instances. How to delete the NAT gateway is two things. First, go to the NAT gateways, select the NAT gateway, actions, delete NAT gateway, and for the confirmation here, you need to type delete. Okay, now the question. For this NAT gateway, we associated one elastic IP, right? We associated one elastic IP. What happened to that elastic IP? Does that elastic IP still exist in your AWS account, or it will be automatically released and given back to AWS? It will never ever automatically released. It will be available in your AWS account without any associations, and you will be charged for keeping the elastic IP in your AWS account. So what we have to do, the first step is delete the NAT gateway, and the second one, release the elastic IP which was associated with NAT gateway. Then you can clean up the route related to that gateway. If you remember, we created one route also, right? That is of no use. We need to clean it up. There is no problem even if you keep that as it is. But for clean routes and all, we need to delete them. We will see. Okay. So first one we already completed. We deleted the NAT gateway. Let me wait until I get the state as a deleted. Now elastic IPs. This is the elastic IP, right? Select it, actions, and release elastic IP and release. See, no elastic IPs. Now I'm free. I will not be charged for that. Then go to route tables, private route table, routes, edit routes. Let me do a refresh. Yeah, this is the route table, routes. Can use something called black hole. Why? Because there is no such target exist. We deleted the target, right? We deleted this NAT gateway target, and it is connected to something like what do we call that? It is connected to nothing. One end it is connected with destination, the other end it connected with no target. So just click on remove and save changes. This is how you can clean up the NAT gateway to avoid unnecessary charges at the time of what we call that, learning this NAT gateway concept. Okay, right. So any questions on this NAT gateway and Bastion host?